All right, so today is our last day to finish our Veterans Day project inspired by our beautiful poppies. Now last week in art we created our poppies. We used the art technique called collage when we cut out paper and glue it on top of more paper. And today our poppies need some stems because our stems are what grow underneath our poppies. And today you can even create some leaves as well if you want on your poppies. Now, if you did not finish gluing or cutting out your poppies, you need to do that step first before you move on to our next step. All right, at your table, you will see some long scraps of green paper. You might get some old scraps, you might get some new sheets of green paper. You have to use what you have. And when you look at this paper, it's pretty long. And we're not going to draw today on our paper. We're just going to be drawing with our scissors. So you have to cut confidently. And it's pretty easy to cut our stem. I'm going to start from the bottom of my paper. And a stem never grows perfectly straight. So I'm going to cut kind of a wiggly line. Some parts are going to be wider, some parts are going to be skinnier on my stem. So I'm kind of just wiggling my scissors back and forth, cutting all the way to the top. All right, now I have one stem here. Now you can tell that my stem is a little bit too long, so we'll trim that off later. And what's fun is the wiggly line that we cut before, we can use for our next stem. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the rest of my two stems and I will be right back. All right, so I finished cutting up my 3 stems because I have 3 poppies here. Now you can place your poppies straight, like they're going straight from the ground. You can change the angle a little bit. You can even place 2 stems together like they're growing from one stem that splits into 2. So it's up to you on how you want to place your stems. Now, as you can see, they're still a little bit too long. So I'm going to carefully trim the edges of my stems. And now the next step is to glue. So when I'm gluing, these are really thin strips of paper, and if I were to glue it on top of my table, I might get it messy. So I want you to work on your messy mat today, and using your glue tray, you're going to dip your brush into the glue, wipe, wipe, wipe. And I'm not gonna place glue all over the stem, I'm just gonna make a few dots. And you can see I didn't use a lot. Dot, dot, not a lot. That's our motto for today. And I'm going to angle this stem a little bit to the side. As you can see, I still have a little bit running off, and I'll cut that off later. Then I'm going to go back to my messy mat, glue down, put a few dots of glue, and I'm going to finish gluing the rest of my stems. So I finished gluing the rest of my stems, and I have a little bit extra here, so I'm just going to trim that off. And once you finish your stems, please make sure you take the extra scraps to the recycling bin. Now these 2 scraps are still large enough to where someone else can use them, so I'm going to save these on my table so that the next class or the next person can use these. These are some scraps that people might not be able to use. Now, with the rest of my green scraps, you can cut out some leaves if you would like to. And leaves are kind of just like ovals, but they're a little bit more pointy. I'm going to place that there. And notice when I'm cutting my leaves, I'm starting from the edge of the paper. I'm not cutting in the middle because someone else might be able to use that. I'm cutting closer to the edges of my scrap green paper, and that always makes us mindful so that someone in the future can use the paper as well. So I'm going to finish cutting out my leaves, and then I'll be right back again. All right, so I've already cut and glued some of my leaves, and I'm just adding the last few leaves. Now notice when I'm putting glue on my leaves, I'm actually holding it up because it's so small, and I'm just putting one dot at the top and one on the other side. And I'm gonna put 2 leaves growing on this side because I don't think it'll fit too well over there. But you could always overlap one leaf on top of the other like I did. Now that we finished our beautiful stems and our leaves, we're gonna go into the center of the poppy and add some black paper because poppies usually have black in the very center. So at your table, you will see a smaller sheet of black paper. We are not going to use pencil to draw. We're just gonna confidently cut with scissors. And we need at least 3 circles from our black paper. And I'm cutting actually pretty small circles because they're gonna go in the center on top of my orange. And then if I cut them too large, they might cover up my orange. So let's see, I think this black dot will fit right here. I think this one will be a good size. You know what, I think it's a little bit too big. So I'm gonna trim some off. I think that's a better fit. And you know what, this one is way too big. So I'm definitely gonna cut most of that black off. So we're cutting pretty tiny black centers. You know what, I'm gonna go back and even cut a little bit more. All right, I think that's a great size. So it's almost the size of a penny or a quarter. And today at your table, you might get some paper scraps that you might have to use as well. All right, I'm gonna glue those down. Now, before we glue these down, we're actually gonna do a little bit something special to our black paper. We're gonna create some texture as well on our black paper. So very carefully holding your black circle or oval with your other hand, you're going to nibble just the edges of your black circle. Just the edges, not cutting all the way through, but just the edges. And after you finish cutting just the edges of your black circle, you can kind of fold them up a little bit. You can bend the paper. There we go. And then we're gonna put some glue in the very middle on the back or on one side. Just the tiniest bit of glue. And we're gonna press down, and you can, while you're holding it down, you can kind of bend up those pieces of paper. And now they'll actually kind of stick up off your paper. I don't know if you guys can see that well. So I'm gonna do the rest of my black circles and cut the edges. So I'm gluing my last black dot, and make sure when you put the glue in the center, if you put all the way around, you'll glue your edges down, and the whole point is that we want them to kind of stick up. So make sure that when you're putting glue on the back of these black circles, you're only putting it in the center. That's one of the artist tips I'm gonna offer for you today. All right, so I'm just holding it down and kind of pressing some of them up. Here is my finished artwork. It's, as you can see from this angle, when I tilt the paper, you can see that the black paper is kind of poking out and coming off the page and creating almost like a rough texture. So this is my final artwork. When I'm finished, I'm going to carefully turn it into my color folder at my table. And our option today, if you finish early, is to find someone to help. Please ask them nicely before you help them.